Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cooking Up Virtual Events. Today I'm joined by the amazing Kiki L'Italien. Kiki, thank you so much for joining me. You're looking good in your amazing home studio. Thanks
Oh,
for joining us today.
I'm so glad to be here. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting.
This is going to be fun.
Yeah.
Welcome everybody who's joining us on LinkedIn. And you may know you can watch this on demand later on LinkedIn and also on YouTube. If you're joining us, let us know where you're watching from. I am in a very rainy and stormy Denmark, Helleslev in Denmark today. Kiki, where are you joining us from?
So I'm in Turnersville, New Jersey. Oh, the excitement in Turnersville, New Jersey. Yeah.
Well, both a little bit out of the big cities. How close are you to kind of DC and all that?
DC is about 2 hours away. Philadelphia is the closest city, and this is kind of a suburb of Philadelphia, actually. So it's about
Okay.
15 minutes from Philly.
Just goes to show my East Coast geography is not quite on point, but
I'll forgive you this time. My Denmark geography is just really terrible. So.
yeah, I always tell people I live in southern Denmark, which is above Germany, which always sounds kind of strange to me, but I guess it's geographically correct. Big shout out to David from IMEX. Hello, David. Nice to see you here. We have Renita joining us from Maryland, possibly someone you know well as well.
Oh, I
Um,
know. Look at these names. It's so
Look
great
at
to see
John.
everyone.
John Chen, I think somebody who we know from way
Who's John
back.
Trent? No, I'm just
I
kidding.
know.
Everybody knows John. Yeah.
Hey Renato from Ovation over in snowy Switzerland, and my good
Yeah.
friend Andrei Shilowinski watching from Washington D.C., not too far away from you.
No.
Margarita joining us from Amsterdam, and we have Laura also from IMX, also watching us from the UK. Sophie
Laura.
Sanders from Haarlem in the Netherlands, the original Haarlem. We have Paola watching us. She says bonjour. I don't know where Paola is located. Let us know, Paola, in the comments. And Brigitte from Belgium. Nice to see you, or nice to have you with us, Brigitte. We have also Ed. Ed, nice to see you. Ed and I go way back from MPI UK and Ireland chapter presidency. Nice to have you with us today, Ed. And we have also Victor Negrin, or Negrin Victor from Romania. So quite a nice spread of people. A little bit of the East Coast, a little bit of Europe. Anybody else from the West Coast, maybe, or over in Asia? Be lovely to hear from you. We have Anarita in Sardinia. I bet that's a little less stormy than Denmark right now. And we have Joanne from Amsterdam. And Paola says that she is in France. So excellent.
France.
Very European audience with a few East Coasters in here as well. Oh, and we have Daniela from Montreal joining us. So, buongiorno a tutti di Montreal. Thank you, Daniela. We have Sarah Merriman in Southampton. We have Agars in Riga
In
from Meet Riga.
Riga, Latvia.
Yes,
Okay.
one of the habitual IMEX exhibitors. So we may have we unfortunately this year we won't be seeing Igars at
Oh,
IMEX, or at least IMEX in Frankfurt, but hopefully later in the year we'll have some more opportunities. A little bit sad about that. And Alessia joining us from Rome. Hello to everybody. So I love taking a few minutes just to say hello and just welcoming everybody on the show. As you know, if you've been on one of these before, we take comments and questions from the audience all the way throughout. So feel free to ask any questions you have of myself or Kiki, or add your comments. You can have your own conversations in the comments. Very welcome to interact as much as possible. So, Kiki, I'd love you to take a moment to introduce yourself. I think your bio on LinkedIn, I love it. Kiki describes herself as the Wonder Woman of marketing strategy for the association industry. I love that. I was hoping that you would show up, in a Wonder Woman costume. So
I
that would be
know,
a
I know. I feel like with such a humble start, yeah. So the Wonder Woman of marketing strategy. In the association world, I'm probably most known for Association Chat, which is an online community and a podcast, kind of like this, where it's bringing people together from the association world, and that's been going on for over 11 years. I come from working in marketing and digital strategy and online community building. And I am also a senior consultant with Tecker International. where we focus on strategy and leadership development for the association world.
Great. That's nicely succinct, which always good to hear directly from you. And I was trying to figure out where we met. I believe it was either at an IMEX or an MPI WEC conference. But do you have an exact recollection of where or when we met?
Oh, I do. I do because
You do.
Tahira introduced us, and I mean, when one meets Miguel, I like it. Like who forgets? I mean, so that was at IMEX, and we met on the show floor, and I made you promise to allow me to actually interview you, because I was brought into a booth to interview different people, important people from the events industry. And yeah, I mean, we got along really. Obviously, it was so meaningful to you. You committed it to memory, right?
But this was what IMEX America
Yes.
2013
Yes. Oh gosh.
or
I think it was like
2012.
probably, yeah, yeah. It was either the first one or the second. I don't know, but
I think so.
yeah.
And you were on the Vancouver booth, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Correct.
And
Yes.
you were doing a podcast at the
I was,
time?
yes, I was interviewing people for the Vancouver booth, and it was basically just to bring people in to get them talking and to have interesting and insightful and inspiring conversations for because the show was so big and so important to everyone. So yeah.
Yeah, and I was looking for those online just because I remember that. I didn't know that that was where we met. But do they still exist online? Is there a record of these? Where are these interviews?
Oh, I shudder to think. I mean, they probably do somewhere, but I don't know where they are now. I don't know where they are. We'll have to find out from Tahira. Wouldn't it
Yeah.
be great to go back? Or
It'd be
terrible?
fun to hear. Well, yeah, exactly. Fun or
Or terrible.
terrible. I don't really
Yeah.
know. I did find some footage of us actually at that same show, maybe the year later, where I
Okay.
had a little social corner at IMAX, and we were doing some interviews. And
Oh
there is an
no.
interview with you, which is kind of fun. I
No,
won't
you are
embarrass you
kidding
now,
me.
and I don't want to make this whole show about us just reminiscing, but it's fun, and you look at those things and you hear what we were talking about, and if you have an opportunity to see that again, your answers were all about community
Huh.
associations and technology. So it's very much about what's exciting for you coming up, what's interesting at the show, and your answers were all about technology, which I thought was really interesting and kind of still makes sense. I think I don't think necessarily things would change too much, but it was
Huh.
kind of interesting to hear that.
Nice. It's nice to be able to go back and see, like, what's my track record with that? So it's also like scary. I'm like, what did I say?
Well, I don't think either of us would contradict ourselves, but it's always interesting to see if if it still makes sense, if it's still
Yeah.
relevant. I think
Yeah.
is really interesting. A few more shout outs. We have Hector from Cologne. We have Heidi, who was one of the guests recently from Norway. Wishing everybody a beautiful day. Heidi's just about to start the digital trip, I think, in a few days, so that should be really interesting. Looking forward to hearing more about that. We have also Camilla from New York City. Great. And Annie, also from the IMAX team over in Brighton. And we have Cameron, who we both know quite well
Yes.
over, was it upstate New York, I believe Cameron is. So not too far away, also on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So absolutely interesting, fascinating to hear about association chat. I have a little short video to show, which maybe let's do that now. And I'd love to kind of explore a little bit more about association chat, because we're talking about association chat, which is, I don't know if it would fit necessarily into most people's definition of a virtual or online event, but I think it has some amazing qualities. And that's why I really wanted to bring it on and just talk about that event or that
Mhm.
series of events, but also other things that you're doing because of those interesting features. So I'm going to play the video. The video that I have to play is actually the 10-year celebration video. Because I
Oh
was
my
trying
God.
to find the video that would best describe what is association chat. And I mean, you have a YouTube channel with I don't know how many videos, but a lot of videos.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find anything that really explained what association chat is. It's like if somebody doesn't know
Now
what it is,
I need to make that, obviously.
exactly. So I'll just play this, and maybe afterwards we can just talk through and explain a little bit further what that is.
Okay. Hey, we're at Knuckle Puck. We're in Arlington, Virginia, and we're going to celebrate 10 years of Association Chat. 10 years! Where did the time go? It's really hot outside, but it's about to get hotter inside. So we're getting ready to go live with everybody. We're doing the virtual toast, and it's about to happen. So I can't talk to you very much right now because we're going to go live. What an awesome night. It was amazing. I cannot believe all of the great people that showed up. Oh, I wish you had been here. It was truly unforgettable, and I have the pictures to prove it. So there you have it. Community wins every time.
Wow. Love it. Obviously, this was, a physical event that happened last summer, right?
Yeah.
And you celebrated 10 years of Association Chat. And I guess people there know you well and know Association Chat well. So who are these people and why did they show up?
Okay, so well, it's a combination of people who were actually there. So Association Chat started as a really pornographic sounding hashtag, like back in the early days of Twitter. It was all about getting together and having this moderated discussion every week online. And so ASIN chat, right? If you see it, it looks like it looks like it's going to be something that is going to invite a lot of spam. But
Well, yeah, but if you just had Ask Chat, that would be any better.
Ask Chat, I know. And then Association Chat was too long. Anyway, so I lean into it, ASIN chat. And it started out because it started out like that, it tends to attract a lot of people who are drawn in by technology and they were early adopters, and they were people who were interested in the association space. And when I say association space, I mean really anyone who works with associations. So there has always been this overlap with event profs, with the events community, because every association has big event, or most of them have, large events and trade shows that they use and that they work with. And so it started out like that, and then it just ended up becoming something where it developed. And my background is actually, when I worked directly for associations, it wasn't just in marketing, but it was also building communities, building chapters internationally for several different associations. And so when I joined Delcor Technology to do that for lots of associations, became a consultant, joined the dark side. And the ASIN Chat community needed a home. People wanted to talk in between the chats. And so, this was always just something where I showed up on Tuesdays at 2 Eastern time to host a conversation. And so I had to have like an online place for people to connect in between the chats. That became a Facebook group. Now it's got the blog, it's got the podcast, which is the interview series. It has, the Patreon page and like on and on and on, but it's just grown over the years. And it's
I'm
played.
just sharing it on the screen now so you can just see the homepage. I mean, you have a lot of stuff on here, right? Like it's all Association Chat.
Yeah. And if you scroll down, so I think one of the big pivotal turning points actually ended up being, about 4 years ago, when Trump was elected in the United States. There was a letter that was written from the American Society of Association Executives that, it wasn't actually from them. It was from the National Association of Manufacturers, that was welcoming Trump and his administration into office. And lots of different associations and trade associations signed on to that. And when they did that and submitted it, there were people within the association community that were very, very upset. And they were talking about it on Association Chat. And this thing was, people were talking about leaving ASAE. They were talking about like withdrawing from it, and putting on this fight because they felt that they weren't being heard, and they felt that because of some of the early concerns about DEI issues and stuff like that, they were saying, "Hey, how can you welcome this person in when you're supposed to have a commitment to DEI, and we're not sure that he's going to be inclusive and all of this stuff." And
Yeah.
so what ended up happening at that point is that I reached out to ASAE and I said, "Hey, by that point I had an interview series. I said, "Hey, do you want to come on and talk about this with the community?" Because there was a lot of anger and stuff festering up. And I thought, the best thing, the most important thing that we could do as a group, because we're all a community, we're all together, we're all trying to work together and do things together.
Hmm.
um, I thought the most important thing was for everyone to have a conversation. So John Graham, who's now passed, but for years was the CEO, executive director of ASAE, came on, and the head of the board, Scott Wiley at the time, he came on as well. And I asked them the hard questions, right? And people showed up from the community to also ask their questions. And to ASA's credit, they showed up. They were there. They were there to answer the questions and to, handle some of the concerns that people had. And that, I think, was a real breakthrough moment for the community, because the importance of having an online space where it's outside of the association itself,
Hmm.
but that people can raise their concerns and have them heard, that I think was a really important moment for people to see. Yeah, this is a great place to help each other out, but it's also a place where we can make sure that our concerns are addressed. And so to
Yeah.
me, that was like a real meaningful moment where it went from being a fun thing that I do every Tuesday and a community where I go and I post interviews, to something where it actually felt like it was playing a meaningful role.
Yeah.
And so,
Just wanted
yeah.
to bring something up that John says here in one of his comments, which I think makes sense, which is, you say that right at the end of that video, community wins every time. Uh, I think he says here pre-pandemic, which I don't necessarily agree. I think community still wins every time, but I think obviously it's easier to or more social to get together in person and pre-pandemic. And what you're saying there, I think is really interesting, because you're saying you're always building this community, and then things got a bit serious, right? It's like there was a lot of value in having this conversation, and I wanted to maybe go into a little bit of this relationship with ASC. I mean, association chat, as far as I understand, is separate from ASC. It's not a endorsed, or it's not part, but you have a close relationship with ASC. I mean, how does that work, and is it a conflict? Do you see, like, are you competing with ASC? Like, do you have, are there any issues there, or
I
does it work out okay?
That's a really, I love you, Miguel, for asking it. That's a really good question. And it does come up a lot. And there are people who have referred to association chat as being like, sort of like in the French Revolution, where it's like we're charging up. And listen, I am good friends with the American Society of Association executives, because listen, they advocate on Capitol Hill for very important things that need to be done for the association industry. And that is not what association chat does, which, I think that they play such an important role. And I actually, I help develop courses for them and stuff. I'm a longtime cheerleader for the work
Hmm.
that they do. That said, we can love our parents, but our parents aren't always right, right? And so sometimes things come up. And when they do, I like to think of it, when I was in sixth grade, I'm going to go back. When I was in sixth grade, at the end of the year, my sixth grade teacher wrote on one of my papers, and she says, "You're quite the diplomat." And at the time I thought, "Ooh, what is diplomat?" Like, that's quite the word. Oh my gosh, I'm a sixth grader, I'm a diplomat. But I think of it as being something like, I just want people to be able to talk, to communicate, and to be able to move forward. So we don't always have to agree, and there might be things where, you know, just recently there was a discussion about how ASAE should be doing more, and there's a letter that was put together that said, okay, show that you're condemning what's happening, what happened, the riot on at the U.S. Capitol,
Hmm.
by doing these things, right? These are the concrete steps you can take.
Yeah.
I think that they make sense. I think that they're important steps to be taken. And I have no problem, sharing that information or talking about that. But it doesn't, like, I'm not anti ASAE. I never will be, because I think that they do important things. And I want to, like, I love working with them. I think association chat plays, it is an interesting role, because I never intended for it to become, um, and I love what it's become, but I never on purpose intended for it to, like, become the as large as it is, or reach as many people as it does. And now there's some responsibility that comes with that is hard, because I can't always, or I don't feel like I can always be quite as vocal about my own personal opinions, because I represent, a community rather than just myself. And so
That
that probably weighs more heavily on me than I ever, imagined or
So
intended.
that's really interesting because if I understand you correctly, you're saying you have a good relationship with ASE.
Hmm.
Association Chat is not ASE; they're separate
No,
bodies.
totally separate.
Was there ever a consideration of kind of merging, or kind of because it
Okay.
feels like you're in the same kind of space, right? And you're kind
Yes.
of
So I
and
actually,
I'm not trying to get you to reveal stuff that you don't want to talk
no,
about,
no,
right? If
I
you don't want
want
to talk
to. I
about this,
want
please
to,
don't.
because here's my dream, and this is a crazy dream, and I've actually been laughed at for sharing this dream before. So everyone get ready. Belly laughs. This is my dream. Okay. So I actually shared this in a large room of uh, association executives at a Great Ideas conference 2 years ago. And it's this: my dream would be to be able to put together a large, like, caravan of association speakers, and to be, I mean, right now with COVID, we, whatever, this isn't possible, but imagine, like, the visiting circus that goes from place to place, only it's focused on association related information, and bringing people together here. Within the United States, we have a lot of regional SAEs. And I think it would be so amazing to go from SAE to SAE, bringing the association community together, bringing everyone together at, like, literally tent shows, right? Where people are able to come together under the big tent and eat and drink and connect, because not everyone can afford to belong to the primary, the ASAE. It's, not everyone can afford to be members there. They might just belong to their state society of association executives. But I believe, and I have this written on the private Facebook group, I honestly believe that every single association industry professional should be able to connect, no matter whether they can pay a dime or not. And we should have a way where people are able to communicate and connect.
So,
And
if anybody's interested in joining, I mean, this sounds like an amazing road tour. And I mean, do you think the events would look something like the one we saw in the video, like the 10-year anniversary, like a kind
something
of
like that.
community led event?
Yeah, I would love to see. There's some speakers who, I'm sure, would love to do this sort of thing and, like, share in different regions and move across. But I think it would be great to do that, because I want to bring everyone together. Now, to be totally transparent, I actually did go to ASAE, and I talked with Susan Robertson about this idea, and also talking about, working with them to build community, because while I have other things that I do, like, I have Amplified Growth, and I work with Tecker International, and Association Chat, I feel there always needs to be a place where people feel safe to go and talk outside of an official association.
Hmm.
Um, I also, at my heart, I always want people to come together, and I'm really good at bringing people together, I think. And so,
Well, you've been doing it for 10 years and you've been building something for 10 years, which is absolutely amazing. I mean, I work with a lot of organizations that talk about community.
yes,
Uh, and when I really unpack what they have in terms of community, a lot of times they have a mailing list, that
yeah,
comes from
yeah,
lots of different sources, and I don't even know if they're GDPR, kind of correct or anything like that. So this is one of the things I wanted to touch on. You talk about community, and I think you really embrace community like very few people that I know, right? Like building a community for 10 years is incredible. And the warmth of the community that you display in those videos and the way people talk online about Association Channel, about you, is very much like a personal relationship, right? And it's like, how do you do that? And how, what would be your advice to people who can see, like, they want to build community? What is it that you do that other people don't do?
well, I probably have not created as many personal boundaries as I maybe should have in the
Well, so there
um,
are some downsides as well, right? It probably keeps you
yeah,
busy, doesn't necessarily always pay the bills. Kind of
I
possibly
think
something that.
I think part of it is maybe that I try to I think I'm able to see things from different perspectives. And so I'm not so quick always, maybe not as quick as a lot of people might naturally be most of the time, to only, tend to have this bias towards, one particular direction. And just because I disagree with people, and sometimes really seriously disagree with people, it doesn't mean that I don't think that they have a voice or they should speak or share. And it doesn't mean that I don't think that we can move ahead. And so like, it goes back to that whole diplomat thing. And then I studied journalism in college too. So like being able to think about different aspects of the story, I think that goes into it a great deal. And maybe
Yeah.
at a really, really basic level, I just really want to get to the point where we move past a lot of struggle and are able to celebrate together. I mean, ultimately, I think that us as humans, and I saw John Chen wrote over here in the chat. He said that his latest community book recommendation is Belong from the CEO of Daybreakers. Do you know, John? I had Rada on here on Association Chat and interviewed her a year or two ago, and I guess it was 2 years ago now, and talked with her, and actually went and interviewed Mickey, who's her twin sister, who also wrote a book, and is the CEO of like Thinks and stuff like that. Um, and that focus on community, that focus on being able to all get everyone together so that we're trying to do something bigger is the benefit of being human. I mean, we are, as human beings, I don't have massive claws. I don't have big long teeth. Like if I am going to survive when things get really rough, it needs to be because there's somebody else that I'm collaborating with. And
Yeah.
ultimately, all of us humans, we need to figure out who we can trust, who we can collaborate with so that we can do bigger and better things. And that's the way that we advance, is not fighting each other, but actually coming together and working on things together. And
Yeah.
so isn't that amazing, Miguel? Like that's why. That's why. I
For
just
sure.
want
I
us to
think
all get further down the field.
absolutely. I think Cameron says a great thing here. Kiki cares. I think that makes sense. I think you're not just seeing members of a community as dollar signs, right? You're kind of welcoming everybody as they become members or as they inquire, which I think is super important. I share the recommendation from John of the book. I think is great. Cameron earlier also said, build your community online now, celebrate offline later.
Yeah.
I think build always, right, and celebrate in any way you can. But yeah, absolutely. Now that at the moment we can't celebrate in the same way, I think it's the best we can do. Oh, sorry, that's not what I wanted to bring up. I'm going to bring Sarah Merriman's comment. Being part of a community creates a sense of purpose. People need that now more than ever.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree with that, Sarah. I think that's really, really, really valuable. So yeah, I think this is what I see really powerful in association chat. But before we move on to other events, because I want to talk about some other events, I wanted to just get to a little bit to the nitty gritty, the technical side of association chat. I think if people are interested in how it's produced and how do you put it together, so it's a video interview. You do it every week. So
Yes.
a lot of people call it podcast. I don't know if it's right to call it podcast. I always feel like podcast is more like an audio thing,
But
but
it is.
I
It
guess you
is.
do both, right?
There's the audio. Okay. All right. Get ready. Strap yourselves in because here it goes. All right. So there is the interview that I like to do live so that there is a chance for people to ask their questions, right? And that is
Like we're
recorded
doing here, right? So
like we're doing right here. And actually, I do. I use StreamYard, but in the past, I've used Crowdcast, I've used Blab, I've used
oh
Skype.
wow, Blab
A
goes back
lot
a few years. That was
that
what
goes
like that
all
was
the way
short. That
back.
only lasted like a year
Yeah,
or something like that. It
there was
was short
Blab, and then
lived.
there was Huzzah,
Meerkat as well. Yeah.
Meerkat, Huzzah. Which
Mhm.
do you even remember Huzzah? Like Huzzah was there. So
Mhm.
I've used a lot of different platforms, and I think that that actually ties back to kind of the roots of being an early adopter, where it's like, these new technologies come out, and if it improves upon what was there before, I'm not afraid to jump and go to a new place to do what we do. But it comes out. The format is this. There is a weekly interview
Mhm.
that allows for live interaction. And the live interaction is because I want people within the community to always be able to ask their questions and feel like they're heard.
Okay. And
And
that's what
people,
about an hour long, something like
yeah, it's
that.
about an hour long. And people will ask me like, why it's so hard for you to schedule like the live with a live audience. Why not just have several in the can and do them all in a row or whatever? And I'm like, agreed. Production wise, that's way smarter and way easier. But it goes back to the heart of why association chat exists, which is to bring people together. So if I eliminate the live component where they're able to ask questions live, even if it's only 5 people, it's like I feel like I'm cutting out the heart of why
Yeah.
we're even
And
doing
it's
it.
not really an event if you don't do it live, right? It's then just a
Exactly.
recording that you play or becomes available,
Exactly.
right? And
Yes.
where are people live? Where can people watch this and interact live?
So right now they can watch it on the YouTube channel. Not everybody wants to be a part of Facebook anymore. So you can also watch it live within the private Facebook group. The other thing that I do is I end up uploading the audio to Libsyn, which spreads it out to all of the different podcast players. And what's interesting is I found out that some people only listen to it through as an audio podcast. They don't attend live. They actually listen to it later. And it used to be when they were on their commutes. I haven't talked to anyone about how they're listening to it lately, but
Mhm.
it used to be during commutes or during exercise, they would listen to some of the episodes. And the episodes are long form. So they're about 45 minutes to an hour, which is long, right? That's a long
Yeah.
time.
And then you also transcribe them and have them
Trans
as text, right? So
Yeah, yeah. So I transcribe them, and then I try to share little bits. Occasionally, I do have I have an Alexa. I'm going to turn her on now. Um, I do have a flash briefing that you can subscribe to, but fair warning, that is a wild variety. If you want to hear like creative imaginings from inside of Kiki's head, just subscribe to that
so
because
it's not necessarily linked to the show. It is a sort of
it's association chat, but sometimes it's just like I feel like I'm shouting into the ether with it, and I don't have proof that I'm not. So because of that,
but that's the danger with kind of not doing something live where you get feedback, right? I
right?
guess if it's like on YouTube, you can see the numbers, but if it's
Well,
not, then a
I
lot of
mean,
times you're kind of like, well, it's there.
So there's a sneaky part of me that feels like it's kind of nice to. I push out a lot of content all the time, and I wish I could do even more, but I can't. But it's my play space. Like I put a lot of crazy, weird. I write. I mean, like poems, like you know, the meanderings of my mind. I'll share, and until I have proof that people are actually really for sure listening, I have no reason not to just explore and have fun. I mean, I think I really do think of it as like
Yeah.
just sort of shouting into the void. And then unless somebody tells me not to, I'm going to just keep doing it because I can and I like it.
And,
So
and for those of you who don't know what an Alexa, what is it? I
yeah, so
forgot the
it's
name right now.
the so yeah, if you have the Echo devices or the Dots or anything like that, you can subscribe to flash briefings. And
Flash briefing.
if you go into your app, you can actually go and find it and subscribe to the association chat flash briefing. And I'll put some pretty like just random stuff in there. They're always short. It's always
And
like
there
five
was it
minutes or under.
5 minute kind of audio flashes, right? They're kind of like little messages. Okay, and talk to us a little bit about the production of this. Like, is it just you? Do you have people helping you put it together? And how do you kind of, I guess you set up a call with the speakers. How do you find the speakers? Tell us a little bit like that pre-production side.
So, okay, on the pre-production side, I have worked with other people in the past. So, occasionally I'll work with someone. Usually it's like a podcast, podcast company that, production company that wants to put stuff together and wants to get an audience with the association community because a lot of associations put together podcasts. And so I've worked a little while with going into a studio where they took care, they mostly do podcasts, but they do, they're able to, put video and stuff up. That was kind of like, that worked well for a while. And then it becomes difficult because my production, having to have that live component is always the big hang up. And then on the other side of getting the sound part of it, it's just me. So I am responsible for giving all of that production information to anybody who needs to edit it.
Yeah.
So I'm the hang up usually is what I'm saying.
You're the funnel, right? If,
I'm
if,
the
if
fun.
you're if you're
I'm
busy,
where
then
things
it's
get
tough to get it
stuck.
out. Right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to use this to ask a question to the audience about podcasts. Right. They've become really popular the last few years. I just wondered, anybody who's watching, if you'd let us know in the comments if you are a regular consumer of podcasts. So just a general question. But I'd also like to ask you a little bit of a question about this pandemic time. Do you continue to use podcasts in the same way that you were before? Or is it, do you listen to them more because you're at home and you like having podcasts playing, or do you listen to them less? So let me know in the comments if you are a podcast listener and if your kind of behavior has changed. And myself personally, I used to listen to a lot of podcasts when I was traveling, when I was on
Mhm.
flights. I, kind of download podcasts and then kind of have them on the flight. It's a nice thing to have when you can't be connected to the internet. And I actually like not being connected on flights. I'm not a fan of buying the Wi-Fi or anything like that. I actually quite like it as kind of offline time. But now, because I'm not flying anywhere, and also because I have a young daughter, I don't feel like podcasts fit in anywhere. I don't feel like I have a podcast time. And I'm also not great at kind of multitasking and having kind of podcasts going and, writing something or anything like that. So definitely have been listening less to podcasts, but I wouldn't say that I was a kind of avid user of podcasts in general beforehand. What about you, Kiki?
So I am very similar to you, but what's interesting is I'm seeing over here in the chat that Hector and then Gina is saying, you know, Hector says that podcast use has gone up 500% during the pandemic. Gina says yes, and she's listening to more. I have heard that over and over again from people who are saying, "Oh, I'm just now getting into podcasts," and I'm like, "What?" Like I'm listening to them less than I used to, and I think it's because, like you, Miguel, like I fit them into certain times of my life whenever I couldn't do anything else, right? When I was like, it was like my downtime, but it was in between one thing and another. And now, because I am able to be plugged in and doing stuff, and maybe because, you know, and I'm a mom and all of this other stuff. I haven't been able to listen to them quite as much. But I'm hearing from so many people who are saying I finally got into podcasts.
Yeah, we have a lot of fans here. Jan is
Yeah.
watching. Thanks for being with us, Jan. He's a big podcast fan. Happy that the offer is much bigger today. Renato is a bit like me, I assume, no longer a big podcast fan. Renato, let us know if it's because you're not traveling, which I'm assuming, but if there's another reason, let me know. Sarah says, I listen to them more now. I never listened
More.
more COVID. Now I'm hooked. People thinking ways of doing things have changed, so I keep up in this way. Excellent. And we have Clark Gruy. Clark, thank you for joining us. I'm new to podcasts. I find it hard to take them in when working, distracts me from focus. How do you do this? Am I old? I'm totally with you, Clark. I think the more we try to multitask, the more we're like on Zoom calls and trying to do our emails at the same time, the more exhausted we are. And I think it's the same
Mhm.
thing with podcasts. I think it's okay if you're cooking or you're doing something that doesn't require you to kind of think
Yeah.
necessarily, but if you're doing something that is kind of very different in content wise, I think it's really challenging to do that.
Well,
We have
when I'm getting ready, it's so for me, like I actually take time to do makeup and stuff like that. And when I'm getting ready, that's become my audiobook and podcast time is like the whole getting ready routine in the morning. And so I'm also in the process of buying a house. So because I'm in that process too, sometimes I need that time just to be quiet and like not have everything kind of going through my head.
you need to kind of
Yeah,
de-stress,
I
I
need to
think.
decompress and de-stress more than anything else. But
Yeah,
that tends to be my daily time when I'm able to listen and I don't
yeah.
have to do anything with my hands or pay attention to something with my eyes.
Perfect. Ed says he's a big fan of podcasts, listens to them more now when he can. And I have Alan here from the IMAX team saying he's never really watched podcasts, which is
Yeah.
there are big variety over here watching. Renato says I'm correct. I found all the new digital opportunities we have right now. Podcasts are becoming a bit dated for me. Interesting, very interesting. And I wanted to bring up this question from Paul, which is how do podcasts differ to radio shows, would you say? And that's an interesting question. I don't know if they do. I mean, how do you feel about that, Kiki?
I think some of them are very close to being radio shows, and I think some of my favorite ones are. And actually, I think that if I could do anything with association chat as far as the production side of it, Paul, I would make it more like a radio show. I love, yeah. When I was a little girl, there was a place where I could go and buy cassette tapes, and they were of old radio shows. And one was called Fibber McGee and Molly, and another was The Shadow. And I would listen to these episodes of Fibber McGee and Molly, which was like a comedy show, and of The Shadow, which was a mystery show. The Shadow knows. And it had all these different actors and sound effects and everything. And some of my very, very, very favorite, not just podcasts, but audiobooks too. Some audiobooks get into that and will do it. And they're totally, it's not like someone reading to you, and it's not just like listening to somebody else's conversation. It's a show, and it's
Yeah,
it's really well crafted and put together, and that's amazing.
that's on a different level. So, what about Clubhouse? Are you on Clubhouse?
I am on
Yeah,
Clubhouse.
I
Yeah.
think who was it? Cameron brought it up just now. Yeah, and he was saying to for everybody to if anybody's on Clubhouse. So tell me a little bit how you see Clubhouse, and we talked about radio shows, we talked about podcasts. I think Clubhouse is somewhere in that kind of cross
Yeah,
spectrum.
Clubhouse
How
is
do you see it?
interesting. I find, okay, so here's the thing. I think we all have so much, humans are visual creatures. There's a whole lot of scientific reason behind all of that and proof to back it up. But we are inundated with noise visually. We have stuff all around us. And especially now, right? Because of COVID, we're all, not all, but many of us are stuck behind our desks attending meetings where we're looking and using our eyes all the time. I think it's no coincidence that something like Clubhouse has taken off, where it's all audio, right? Because we're totally overwhelmed visually right now. So it totally makes sense that we would move to another sense to get overloaded. And to look at that. So Clubhouse brings people together, and they don't necessarily know each other, but they can co-moderate topics, different topics, and have people listen and jump on and talk. I think the hardest thing that they are contending with is that it went from people who were kind of respectful of the situation and figuring out ways to signal to each other when they would hand off the mic, to a lot of loudmouths who have gotten on and are seeing it as a chance to just, talk a long time and have an
I think
audience.
every platform has its highs and lows, right? And then when it becomes too
Yeah,
popular, it becomes kind of exploitative in a way. If anybody is on Clubhouse, just if you want to add your handle in the comments, we'd love to connect with other people. I'm on Clubhouse, Miguel7 at Miguel7, which is my handle for everything.
yeah,
I have to admit, I'm still exploring it. I think we could do a whole show on Clubhouse. I think
okay.
the audio side is really interesting, and I like the idea that it sounds so basic now. Nobody's done it before though. But the idea that anybody with a phone, it's only iPhone unfortunately, but anybody with an iPhone can basically transmit audio on Clubhouse. So you can start a show. It doesn't mean that anybody's going to listen to you, but you can start a show just by pressing a button on Clubhouse, right? And
Yeah,
then people can join you. And there's a little bit of a separation between sort of who's on stage with you and then everybody who's just listening. But the people who are just listening can kind of ask to come on stage as well, right? So there's a little bit of like a live event kind of feeling to it as well.
yeah,
But it just makes it so democratic. And one thing I really like about on Clubhouse is that everybody's just a name, right? It's not like, the keynote speaker is going to do this. It's like, they're just people, and some people jump in and have comments and and kind of moderate talks, and others just listen, and that's okay, right? It's that sort of low barrier of entry. I don't have to be on camera. I don't have to do anything special. I can just turn this app on and listen to some smart people say some smart stuff, or not so smart people sometimes.
I think that's the most exciting thing about it, is that there is such a wide variety and a lot of people that I hadn't previously heard of or knew. And in the very beginning, like it was nice to hear. It was nice to hear from voices that I wasn't familiar with. Now I'm starting to see so many people that I am familiar with. I'm kind of torn between, should I listen and be a part of them and support what they're doing, or should I continue to branch out and like explore in these different areas and listen to new voices? And I guess the answer is kind of 50-50. But the thing about Clubhouse that I love is, like you, I like that it's sort of this democratic platform where anyone, whether they're known or not known or unknown, they can get up and share something. And there's something about hearing that voice in your ear too that makes it
Yeah.
a little more intimate. And what I really like is that people, they can't sort of, I feel like with the visual stuff, they can get distracted by a lot of what's happening here. And if you're listening to this later, like I'm waving my hand around, they can get distracted by what's happening on the screen. But with the audio, you don't even necessarily know what any of these people look like besides what's in their square or anything. And you don't get distracted. You have to actually listen to what they're saying, listen to the words.
I feel like there's a lot to unpack here, and again, we could do a whole show on this. I feel like it feels a little bit like Twitter in the early days,
Hmm. Hmm.
because there's no production, there's no video, there's no flashy images, there's just audio, right? And most people are just pressing a button and talking, not creating a jingle and music and all this kind of thing. It's just thoughts and topics that are interesting, and everybody has the same tools, right? You write the text of the thing that you want to talk about, you invite the people, and that's all you can do.
Yeah.
And I think there's huge power or huge, creativity that comes from sort of the limitations. And I think that's part of why it's working, right? If when you do a show like this, I mean, I keep the tech side of this show very, limited, basic, but it's still, I do care about that. But I don't think that that's the core, right? I don't want to
Yeah.
spend hours and hours trying to figure out exactly how to get all the graphics perfectly. I want to just, get chatting and do things, right?
Well, cooking up with virtual events, let's talk about it because okay, so you know how it's like there's this argument between asynchronous and synchronous and all of this stuff about with offering your online events. The same thing goes for, when you're trying to talk about the value of, well, what does it mean when people are actually coming together online at the same time?
Mhm.
How can you provide value? How can you make it really meaningful? Now, here's the real jewel of Clubhouse for me, is exactly what you were saying there before. So it's everyone's able to come together in a room, but we can't repurpose the content.
Mhm.
So the user rules behind Clubhouse is if you're caught using recordings of people or repurposing that content, then you're kicked off, right? So
Yeah.
so here's the thing. For live events that are then turned into different types of material all down the line, like even what I do with association chat, same thing. It's like you can get the audio version, you can get snippets, you can get this. There is no repurposing this. You miss that conversation, you miss it. It will never happen the same way again, ever. And so that's fascinating to me. I find that absolutely intriguing because
It's that scarcity thing, right?
it's scarcity. Yes, it's exclusive. If you miss that conversation, you'll never, ever, ever in a million
Yeah.
years ever be able to be a part or listen to that conversation again. And
Mhm.
if you do happen to come across a recording of it, then the person who gave it to you is probably going to get kicked off. It's not going to last for very long.
but
So,
but I mean, scarcity is absolutely, and there's lots of tactics there in terms of making it, invite only and that sort of thing. But the other thing, what about the anonymity side, right? Because that's
right.
sort of how I felt. That's a little bit why I compared it to Twitter, 2012, 2013. I felt like at that point on Twitter, because there weren't that many people on there, it felt quite free, and people were free
Hmm.
to speak their mind. And that can have, negative sides, but mostly it's positive, and people are just free to kind of just say what they want. And I feel like that's what's happening on Clubhouse as well. But as it becomes larger and more kind of, I guess, more people are watching, it may also lose that anonymity side, right? So
Well,
I think anonymity, yeah.
yeah. Here's a question
It,
for you. So anonymity to an extent, but you can't go on stealth mode. If people follow you, they know if you're visiting a room, for instance. So there's all kinds of different rooms and topics that are on there. But say I jump on and it's like, I'm just going to throw something out there that's crazy, but like say that it's like, oh, inflatable fun time for adults only XXX or something like that, like some wild topic. People will see if I join some crazy topic, right? So there's no
mhm.
stealth mode, there's no incognito. But with everything that's going on in the United States right now, especially this is on my mind because we just have, this US president who got kicked off of social media because of the way he uses it. My thought is this, with some of the militias and extremist groups who get on right now, Clubhouse is relatively tame, to be honest.
Mm.
What happens when extremist groups get on there and they're having, their platform to communicate, and maybe some of that communication goes in a negative direction? I have not seen any of that happen, but the precedent that's being set right now by other social media platforms that are much larger, that's a concern that I have. And it's that thing where the parent says, this is why we can't have nice things. I don't know how much longer. Go in, everyone, and enjoy Clubhouse while you can. They're either going to have to, come up with some new ways to do things, or they're going to have to start, like, they'll end up having to kick people off. But right now is a really great moment for it, and enjoy it while you can.
Enjoy it while people feel free. Yeah, and when I talk about anonymity, I think there's a positive side to anonymity, not only to kind of be secretive or to be off the radar, but also to speak your mind. And I think on platforms like Instagram and LinkedIn, I feel like most of what you see has a sort of commercial element to it. Not that it doesn't add value necessarily, but there's always a kind of like, oh yeah, I'm just sharing this because I think it's going to be good for my business, and I miss that straight up, straight talk on social media. I think that's
Yeah.
rare on these platforms where you really can say, actually, I don't agree with that, and here's why I don't agree with that. I think it's hard to do that on the kind of larger social media platforms.
It is. And there's a whole long we could go down that path a long way, my friend. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there could be like 3 hour shows. I know everybody's probably going to jump on a meeting on the hour, so I want to try and finish on the hour, but we've only covered like 10% of what we wanted to
Oh, I
cover,
know. We
which
were
is
gonna. I'd be
okay.
happy to.
Which is okay because we're covering interesting things. So I hope everybody found that interesting. I wanted to cover just a few things which I know you have coming up. You wanted to mention Untethered, which was a pretty successful virtual event that happened, I think, in May this year, if I'm not
Hmm.
mistaken.
So
And you're starting to get version 2.0 ready, right? Or the next edition, right?
yes. So Untethered, if you weren't a part of the first one, you don't want to miss the next one. It was in the very this first round of it that we did in 2020. I was just sort of like on the outside periphery involved, helping to get it going, but I wasn't as involved as I am this time. This time I am much more engaged with everyone, pulling it together. And it's people like Ali from Hub and Naomi from Storycraft Lab, Rami from Hub, and from EventCore. It's just so many different people and companies and everyone coming together to do something really incredible. And that's actually going to be coming up. And yes, if you go to this website that Miguel just pushed at the bottom of the screen, right now it's like the 2020 version of information, but in the next few days we're getting the new splash page up, and the event's actually going to be happening March, what time did I tell you, like March 16th 17th, I think, is when
Check the notes. March
we're
16th,
going.
17th. Yeah.
Yeah, 16th and 17th.
Yeah.
And
And you're
that's
going to call it a
actually,
designathon?
it's a design-a-thon, and everyone who signs up to become a part of it becomes part of these circles, and you're helping to design the actual event itself. And it's learning by doing, right? It's recursive. So you want to take part in this. It's very unique, extremely creative, with some amazing individuals involved, leading up the charge. But everyone who becomes a part of it helps to create it. So very exciting.
Now, that sounds really interesting. And I remember when you talked about Untethered, you mentioned that it was an event where a lot of people that were normally competitors were able to
Yes.
collaborate and to create something interesting. And I think that's always a fascinating kind of way to look at it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this is the year for collaboration. So, if anything, we were all trying to figure out what we need to do. Now, if we have any kind of idea about what we need to do, it probably involves someone else that you're going to have to combine efforts with. And I think that it's at times like this when actually bringing in your competitors, in a lot of cases, to be friendly competitors, like where you're working together to do something even bigger, it makes a lot of sense. So this is going to be an interesting year for that.
And last thing you wanted to mention, the Engaginar,
We're
this
calling it,
association.
yeah, it's an engaging
So what's
art.
this all about?
This is for associations. So anyone who's involved in associations at all wants to find out more about this. And, my work with Tecker International, we do a lot of strategy work. And so one of the big challenges has been to figure out, how do you do all of these important decision making and all of these meetings that are supposed to be very involved and usually in person. How do you do that spread out over time and when you're not in the same room? And so we have partnered up with, so it's Tecker International, Association Chat, and House Space. It's working together to show how this can be done. And this is not for the here's the keynote kind of experience. This is for you have teams that you need to do have complicated conversations and do some work with them. And that's what this experience is. And it's free for people who sign up. So check it out. And that rolls
And
out
it's on
in like I think
January 22nd, right?
that's the start date, and it's really the bulk of the work takes place the following week. So
Interesting. Well,
yes.
this sounds like fascinating projects, Kiki. We're on the hour. I wanted to thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoy the hour. I hope everybody who's watching live got a lot out of this. I thought the conversation was fascinating. There's like another 100 events to talk about with Kiki, but we got some tech tips. We got some tips about Clubhouse, some tips about podcasts. So once again, thank you so much. And if anybody's interested in seeing the other episodes of this show and also the big online list of tools for virtual events, head over to virtualevents.wiki. You can also sign up for the email updates, so you get emails before we do these shows, so you can log in. And that's really all I have time for. So Kiki, it's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you'll be a part of the audience at future shows if you can, if the time permits. And I look forward to seeing you in person soon, hopefully at IMEX or MPI or any event coming up. But we're looking forward to that real life socializing soon, right?
It sounds fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And just a quick reminder, Sarah Shuey is my next guest, and she will be live with us on Tuesday of next week. And I'll send the invitations out so everybody has access to that. I hope you can join us then. Till then, have a great week and rest of your day. All the best.